So good morning. If you're joining us live, you're very welcome here on the SVP homepage for Facebook. I'm delighted this morning to be able to welcome Johnson Varghese, who's the National President of the SVP in India. Morning, Johnson.
Good morning, Ken, and good morning, all Vincentians and my brothers and sisters in England and Wales. Good morning to all of you.
Of course, it's more like afternoon there for you, but thank you for joining us.
It's a warm afternoon here.
It's a warm afternoon.
Yeah, supposed to be a rainy day, but no rains today.
It's a warm afternoon. Well, it's a warm morning here. It's going to be a warm day as well, but I think probably not as warm as it is in Kerala, which is where you are.
Yes.
So perhaps you could just start by telling us a bit about the kind of length and breadth of the SVP in India.
Sure, I'm really happy to say. If you look at the society in India, we have, if I say the number of members, it is more than 70,000 with 7,300 plus conferences and 83 center councils. This is the society in India. 70,000 members, yeah. 7,000 plus conferences, and 83 center councils.
And for people who may not know what a conference is, that's a local group, isn't it? Which could
it's the smallest group of the society where the real Vincentian work takes place. And all other levels, so the administrative levels more.
So Johnson, how did you get involved with the SVP yourself?
It's actually my dad was a Vincentian. And I knew that he was going around normally on Sundays. He goes around, he goes to the church, comes back very late. And when we ask him, he says he goes around collecting rice and other things for the poor in the morning session. And after that, in the afternoon, they go distributing the same. So this was all I knew about the society when I was a boy. But when I came back after my education, like completing my post-graduation, all through I was in a hostel in a city. And when I came back, my father had some health problems and he stopped going to the conference. So when I went for the Sunday Mass, these members, one of the members came to me and said, Johnson, why don't you come up to the conference meeting which your father was attending? I said, okay, I'll come. Then they made me sit there. They started with the opening prayer. After everything, they asked me, Johnson, why don't you continue the good work your father was doing? And the question was so direct, I couldn't say no. I said yes. And that was the beginning.
So that was the proverbial tap on the shoulder for you.
Yes, that was when I was 26. Right.
So tell us a little bit about the relationship then between the SVP in India and the twinned relationship with SVP England and Wales. How does that work?
The society in India owes a lot to the society in England and Wales for the big support we are getting from you. When I say the support, we have around 3,000 plus twinned conferences out of the 7,000, and 50% are supported by the Vincentians in England and Wales.
And tell us what twinning involves.
Twinning involves, if you go by the rule book of the society, I can just read out one sentence. It's a bond in prayer, communication, and financial assistance. So the twinning, very concept of twinning, the greatest importance is given to prayer, praying for each other, then communicating with each other and supporting each other. So this is the very concept of twinning, and we have been trying to fulfill the first two. First prayer, of course, is there, but we lack a bit in communication, which has been a problem ever since the twinning relationship started. Mostly because our conferences are in the villages and they find it, though we have mobile phones everywhere, though people have mobile phones, still this communication looks a bit difficult even now, even after a lot of effort by the National Council of India, telling every conference to communicate with the twin overseas. We have improved a lot over these years. Still, I must say, I must apologize that our people are still a bit reluctant. Might be because of the language issue, might be because a little shy to talk to communicate in English. That's the only reason I find why they don't communicate. Still, it is improving a lot. It's improving a lot.
I think our members who are twinned with your groups and conferences understand that there are language and technology difficulties, but the good thing is we're able to communicate today.
Yes,
On
just
here.
because I know English, I can communicate with you.
Exactly.
And you won't believe, in India, I cannot communicate with English alone. So more than 25 languages. And to speak to my next state, I need to know another language. So we can't expect people in the villages to communicate in English.
Yeah, so even within India, of course, with so many languages, there are issues of communication within the society.
I find it difficult to communicate with many of the Senate Council presidents in the north.
Yeah.
Luckily, I know a little bit of Hindi, because in the north, Hindi works better than any other language. Even they don't know English. If you go to Gujarat, Ahmedabad, the CC president does not know English. He speaks mostly Gujarati, but a bit of Hindi also. So with that Hindi, I can communicate with my my Vincentians in the different parts of especially in the northern parts.
Yeah. Okay, well, at this point, just like to say, if you're just joining us live, you're very welcome. My name's Ken Medine. I'm Head of Fundraising, Communications and Marketing for the St. Vincent de Paul Society in England and Wales. And I'm being joined this morning, and I'm delighted to have with us Johnson Varghese, who's the National President of the St. Vincent de Paul Society in India. And we're here this morning mainly to talk about our student sponsorship scheme. So Johnson, let's move on to that. I'd like to know a little bit about how the sponsorship scheme works. So let's start with how the students are identified for the sponsorship.
Normally, the process starts immediately after the National Council of England informs us that we have so many numbers of these scholarship schemes. So normally we arrive at a number before we start the work in India. And we, according to the availability of scholarships, we inform the Senate Council presidents to collect applications through the conferences, the base units. And the conference presidents identify the students who deserve these scholarships, and the Senate Council presidents compiles them, and they hand it over to the National Council of India. Again, the problem is, suppose the National Council of England says we have 1,000 Vidya Jyoti scholarships, or 100 higher education scholarships. We tell the Senate councils accordingly. Suppose there are 1,000, we tell them you send 10 applications from each Senate council. And we also tell the Senate Council presidents, you give the priority, because people sitting in the National Council, we don't know who deserves more. And when they give us 20 applications, we may not be able to give to all the 20 applicants. So we always tell the Senate Council presidents, you give the priority. And on that basis of the priority given and the numbers sanctioned by the National Council of England, we distribute the money, the scholarships.
Okay, you referred to one of the schemes there, but not all our viewers will know about the scheme. So could you just briefly explain the three different schemes and who they're for?
We have three different schemes for scholarships. The first one is HES, Higher Education Scholarship. And this is meant for students who go for higher education in engineering, medical field, nursing. These are the three areas we consider for higher education scholarships. Then comes the second one, which is called the TVTS, Technical and Vocational Training Scholarships. So these are for students who pursue who pursue technical training classes. And the third one is for the school children. Vidya Jyoti is for the school children from up to the 12th standard. The schooling is up to 12th in India. So these are the three schemes we have in India with regard to the scholarship of students.
Can you just clarify what's the age of the 12th standard?
12 should be 12 plus 5, 17, because normally children start schooling at the age of 5.
Right.
So yes.
So it's through from 5 to 17.
5 to 17, yes.
And tell us how the sponsorship is used. How does the student use the money to support them in their studies?
I'll start with the higher education scholarship. Now, the higher education itself is quite expensive in India, very expensive. And you need to have very good marks. You will have a good school. There are entrance examinations of various types in India. There is for medical education, you need to qualify an all India entrance examination. So the students get admitted based on that entrance plus the marks they get for the 12th standard. And the cost of education, higher education, is very, very high. It is very high. And when we say that we are supporting them, the amount that we give is 10,000 Indian rupee. And the amount sponsored by England and Wales is around 9,000 Indian rupee. That comes to 100 plus pounds, I feel, around 100 pounds. And we always insist 10% of what we receive from overseas should be contributed by the conference which recommends the student. So there is a contribution from the conference which recommends the student for the scholarship. Now, coming to the money we give, it doesn't substantiate, it doesn't provide for all their expenses. They depend on many sources. We are only a supporting force, because for medical education, even in the government colleges, it's very expensive. It runs into hundreds of thousands of rupees. So when we give 10,000 Indian rupee, it's not a big money. It's not something by which we can fully support a student, but we give a push. We also give them a support. They take a support from other sources. They go for bank loans and so many other openings are there. So this is support. We can call it only a small support we give for the higher education. And mainly those students who take support from us are those who get admission in the government institutions, because the fee is quite limited when compared to the private institutions. So normally the children who approaches for higher education scholarships are from the government institutions. They're too for the medical line. And see, very few. We hardly have any, because any one or two sometimes come up every year for medical scholarships. We have more of nursing scholarships because it's quite cheaper when compared to the medical, the MBBS, being a doctor. It's quite cheaper, and they get good jobs also if they are placed overseas. In India, there are huge number of students who have qualified the nursing courses, but employability is not that much. There are jobs, but not paying well.
And could you give us some examples, say, of how the children in the primary and secondary school scheme would use the funds? What kind of things would they use them for?
Yeah, when it comes to the schools, now, if you're in a government school or state-run school, you don't have to pay fees. And in some states, midday meals are provided free to the students. books are provided free, but there are so many other things to be taken care of. The uniform, even the shoes, the umbrella, even the school bag costs around 500 Indian rupee. 300 to 500 rupees you have to pay for the school bag. So again, when we give a 1000 Indian rupee, it just gives them a small support. It's a, we intuit, and more than that, when we give this 1000, we ask our conferences also to contribute something so that the school then go to the local schools. There is an issue in going to the local schools, and most of these local schools are local medium. The medium instruction is not English. This is something worrying one of our poor families, because in India still we feel that English education is a must. We need to know English to get a good job somewhere, either in India or overseas. So the poor parents, they struggle hard to put their children in the English schools. So the expenses are much more than they can afford to. Still, they manage. They try to manage, and when we give them a support, they are so happy about it.
I know when I was privileged to meet some of the students who sponsored, I was very struck by one of them who said to me that, what it means to me is that somebody who I've never met and I will never know is interested and cares enough about me and my future life and my family to support me each year. It doesn't cover all my costs, but it means a lot to me that they do that, and I really appreciate it. Is that a kind of common sentiment, would you say?
Yes, exactly. When we distribute the scholarship, we always tell the students, there is someone overseas, someone whom you have never seen, whom you never meet, made a sacrifice to support you. We tell them to pray for them. That's all you can do for the people who give you that money. So this is how we tell our students when we give the scholarship. There is someone whom you have never seen coming forward to help you in your education, and gives a lot of positive energy to those students.
Yeah, I could sense that very much. They were very passionate about their studies, and their parents were saying how hard they worked.
Yes, true.
Just to say for people who may be just joining us, you're very welcome. My name's Ken Medine. I'm Head of Fundraising, Communications and Marketing for the St. Vincent de Paul Society in England and Wales. I'm really delighted this morning to be joined live by Johnson Varghese, who's the National President of the St. Vincent de Paul Society in India. And we're talking today about our student sponsorship scheme, which is a really vital aspect of our work because it enables young people in India to essentially find a pathway out of poverty. So we're just learning a bit more about the scheme. Johnson, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, some people wonder what happens in future years. Say, for example, if somebody sponsors one of the young children for £15, and that's a one-off sponsorship, isn't it? How are they supported in future years?
Sorry, I didn't get you, Ken. I didn't get you, Ken, clearly.
So if a student is sponsored for 1 year, how are they supported after that in the future?
Now, they will be very happy if they get continuous sponsorship till they complete the school education. But
yeah, I'm talking about the primary and secondary school program.
Yes, and when we tell them that we cannot guarantee it, they said, okay, they're happy with what they get. That's the feeling many of the students have. But they love to have a continuous. I think if it is a continuous sponsorship, we could have contact between these two, the sponsor and the student, and we can build up a contact between these two parties. I think the sponsor as well as the students, they can correspond, and they will be the students will be, they'll be very happy, and the energy that they get through that correspondence will be more than what we can give, what the parents can give.
Yeah, so, and I understand also though that in future years for the primary and secondary school program, that after the first year, the £15 sponsorship, the local SVP conference or group will often support them, or another twin in another country. Is that right?
Yeah. Can you make it clearer?
So after the first year of sponsorship, in the 1 year sponsorship program for the primary and secondary children, I understand that very often in future years, their support is continued by the local SVP conference and possibly through twinning with other countries. Is that right?
No. See, we don't have scholarship schemes with any other country. Australia, we have a different type of a scheme, but they have suspended for the time being because of the financial crisis in Australia. So the only education scholarship scheme we have for school children is only with England and Wales. Netherlands supports a bit for higher education, but for school children, only with England and Wales we have sponsorship scheme.
Right. Okay. So can you tell us a bit about the impact that it can have on their families, not just while they're doing the course, but after they qualify?
Yes. See, the school children after the 12th standard, that's up to the age of 17, and after that 12th standard, one needs to go for higher education. You cannot get employment after your 12th standard. So this is the base we give when we support the school children. We give them a base to work upon so that they pursue for higher studies in the future.
So can you perhaps describe one or two examples of students that you know about and the impact the scheme has had on them and their families?
Sure. I remember meeting one girl who we sponsored for her nursing courses after the school education. And that girl came to me and told me, brother, just because of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul's support, I could complete my studies, mainly because I had a feeling that there was somebody who does not know me supporting me. And she was telling me I was daily, though I did not know the person who was supporting me, I was praying for the person daily, and she completed her course and she got a job and she wrote back to the conference, the society, now I will support a student who does not have the facilities, not to the extent they need, but to the extent she has the resources she has.
That's
That was
wonderful.
something, that was a wonderful thing I saw.
Yeah.
And I was so happy to see. And we have many cases, people coming back after some years saying that I know one priest who told me, Johnson, brother, when I was in the seminary, I was supported by the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And now I'm in the parish, I do a lot to support the society to continue the similar work. And he says, wherever I go, I say, I was supported by the Society of St. Vincent de Paul my seminary days. So those kind of feedbacks we get from different parts of the country.
Yeah, when I was in India recently making the short film about our student sponsorships, I met one young man, Andrew, who's studying medicine. And he said that when he qualified, his ambition was to be able to offer free medical care and treatment where he can in the future for people who are unable to afford it.
Yes, great.
That's wonderful. Johnson, the time's going very quickly, so we'll have to wrap up soon, but
yes,
a couple of things I wanted to ask you briefly. Obviously, the world is suffering from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The UK is no exception, and we hear stories from India. But what's it like on the ground as far as you're concerned?
Today,
and how is it impacting education?
Yes, and today we recorded the highest number so far. 17,000 plus cases was the announcement in the morning in India. And the disease, of course, the disease kills people, that's true, but not, the percentage is very low. But what we find in India is, especially in the northern states, people may die of poverty, hunger, because there's no work. Nobody is allowed to go out. Almost all the offices are shut, the factories are closed, the shops are closed, and people don't have any work. And that's the problem we are facing now with COVID.
Mm.
COVID comes and goes, but the poverty is going to be a real difficult problem we are going to tackle.
So the student sponsorship scheme is going to be even more important in the future.
It will be very, very important, especially in the next coming few years, because the parents have no earnings.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we wrap up, Johnson, is there anything that you'd like to say? Is there any message you'd like to give to people in England and Wales who support the student sponsorship scheme?
My message is a message of gratitude more than anything. The amount of support England and Wales are giving to us is more than anything we could ever think of. Whenever there is a calamity, whenever there is a crisis, we find the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in England coming forward to support us. And the scholarship schemes, I think the message is spread to a large number of people when it comes to scholarships, because we have a large number of students benefiting by the scholarships. And they will always remember the society in England for the big support we are getting from you. It's a big gratitude. Namaste, I should tell you, all the Vincentians.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're very grateful to you for all you do to educate us on the realities of life in India. The twinning relationship is vitally important to all the Vincentians here. People in parishes who are not part of the society who also support us and support our conferences and our groups, and many of whom also sponsor children on their own. So we know how important it is. We know how vital it is for the future. And we will do our utmost and our best to ensure that we can meet the needs as far as we can for the society in India in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken, for this initiative you have taken. I must thank the National President of England and Wales, Sister Helen, then Brother Sebastian Moore, Brother Ken, all of you for the concern you have for the poor in India. That's something more important than anything. I know only because of that concern you are taking so much effort to support us, to make the Vincentians in England know what is happening in India, how the society functions. Of course, there are shortfalls from our side. You know, being a big crowd, 70,000 people, people have language issues. So these things happen. But sincerely, I tell you, not intentional. They have not right. They are not corresponding. Not with intentionally. It happens like that. Might be because of their ignorance of the language, because of the poverty. No, it's because of that. So if we ignore that part, we are ready to be served.
No, we understand, Johnson. We all have challenges that we face. We have other different challenges in England and Wales.
Yes, yeah, I understand. Yes,
to rise to as well in our own way.
Things are going to be different.
So just to say, if you're watching now, if you're watching later, that we have information about our student sponsorship scheme on our website. There is also a film which I was involved in producing in Chennai in March, just before the lockdown kicked in, and we had to curtail the trip actually and come back early. But you'll be able to see that video on our website, and there are others that will illustrate the work of the society in India that we'll be posting shortly. Johnson, thank you very much again for your time. I hope we can do this again one day soon.
Yeah.
It's been really useful.
Area. Yes.
Really interesting to talk to you and lovely to connect with you across all those thousands of miles this morning or this afternoon.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.